A gentleman calling himself Ridge Speaks started following me, and he's a truther. And there's a little bit talk about the Satanic Panic, the Georgia Guidestones, Satanism, yada yada yada, which led me to think, why don't I cover Satanism? I was raised as a Satanist. I know about Satanism. I lived through the Satanic Panic. I know about the Satanic Panic. And there's a woman by the name of Zeena LaVey, or Zeena Schreck, known by her name Zeena, who was the daughter of the founder of the Church of Satan and modern Satanism as we know it, Anton Szandor LaVey, whose real name is Howard Levy. So who was Zeena? Well, this is what I find interesting. A lot of people will talk about Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. And that's because Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino was the head of the Psychiatric Warfare Department of the Army. Okay, that's what he was the head of, was psychiatric warfare. Which is interesting. But as far as Satanism is concerned, I don't think that Lieutenant Colonel Aquino is anywhere near as influential as Zeena was. Why do I say that? Well, despite the number of books that Lieutenant Colonel Aquino wrote toward the end of his life, and despite the role that he played in the Psychiatric Warfare Department, and despite the fact that he was the founder of the Temple of Set, Zeena was the head of 3 satanic organizations. She was the High Priestess of the Church of Satan, she was the High Priestess of the Temple of Set, and she was the High Priestess of the Werewolf Order. Okay, so let's talk about Zeena. She was born Zeena Galatea LaVey. She's a singer, songwriter, musician, composer, performance artist, photographer, visual artist, author, religious teacher. She was active from 1967 to present. Her spouse was Nicholas Schreck, who she divorced in 2015. Her parents were Anton LaVey and Diane Haggerty. Now, Diane Haggerty, some people believe that Diane Haggerty is actually the one that wrote the Satanic Bible. There's some speculation about that. I don't know what's what with that, but I do know there's speculation. Carla LaVey, who I will also cover, is her half-sister who founded her own version of the Church of Satan, due to the Church of Satan becoming what the Church of Satan has become, called the First Satanic Church, which was one of the first names of the Church of Satan. Her genres include electroacoustic, blah, 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 website, ZeenaSchreck.com. Zeena was raised within the Church of Satan and came to international prominence early in life as the organization's spokesperson defending the church during the 1980s. She resigned her position in 1990, severed ties with her father, and renounced LaVeyan Satanism. Her religious path eventually led to teaching Tibetan Tantric Buddhism. Zeena was born in San Francisco, California, to Anton LaVey and Diane Haggerty, co-founders of the Church of Satan. Oh, so they're now given credit as co-founders. I did not know that, or at least Wikipedia does. 3-year-old Zeena had the first and most highly publicized satanic baptism in history, performed by her father. The ceremony garnered worldwide publicity, with a reenactment of the ceremony recorded for the Satanic Mass LP. Zeena was subjected to hundreds of journalistic reports and interviews, especially in tabloid crime and men's magazines. Anton LaVey biographer Burton H. Wolfe described a 13-year-old Zeena in his introduction to her father's The Satanic Bible as Zeena remembered by people who saw the famous photo of the Satanic Church baptism as a tiny tot, but now a gorgeously developed teenager attracting a growing pack of wolves of the human variety. In an interview with the Guardsman, she describes becoming a mother at the age of 14 while living in a stifling, dysfunctional family. Zeena was married to her Radio Werewolf band partner and frequent collaborator, Nicholas Schreck, from 1988 to 2015. In 2019, both parties issued jointly written public statement on their respective websites stating, after having been separated since 2007, we agree to amicably divorce Zeena chose to retain her married name. Early artistic influences and training. Zeena's work as a photographer, visual artist, musician, composer, and writer are heavily influenced by mystical and magical traditions. Stylistically, she gravitated at an early age to artists and mentors whose art was imbued with a mystical or magical vision. As a teenager and young adult, she trained in and studied theater, drama, and film. At 16 years of age, Zeena passed the high school equivalency exam, which is the GED, which enabled her to leave high school early. She began working legally and enrolled in City College San Francisco, majoring in drama. In addition, Church of Satan, I think that's what it is. Sorry, City College of San Francisco's drama department. She also received instruction from Stella Adler's Studio of Acting, Eric Morris acting coach, Viola Spulin's student, Marcia Kimmel of the Next Stage Improvisation Theater, San Francisco, and the San Francisco School of Dramatic Arts. Her study focus was Hellenic sacred drama, improvisation, and various branches of Stanislavski system and method of acting. I know nothing about theater, so despite that I was forced to take theater classes in college due to my major of phys ed, I know nothing about it. The importance of lineage as a vehicle for passing down metaphysical energy guides Zeena's ritual art. She traces the lineage of her magical art to the mentorship of her godfather, filmmaker Kenneth Anger. During the 1960s and 70s, Anger transmitted the influences of Curtis Harrington, Jean Cocteau, and Maya Deren on his own work to Zeena during her childhood and adolescence. Zeena also became a longtime friend of director Curtis Harrington, who cast her as Dietrich, like a Dietrich-like character in his last film Usher in 2000. Religious groups. Zeena became the high priestess of the Church of Satan and remained its spokesperson until 1990. In 1985, she became the high priestess and left in 1990. In 1990, Zeena left the Church of Satan and renounced her father's teachings of Levian Satanism. She later became a devotee of the ancient Egyptian deity Set, becoming high priestess of the Temple of Set in 2002 and forming the Setian Liberation Movement. She was also the high priestess of the Setian Liberation Movement later that same year. Interviews, articles, and reviews from 2011 to 2013 referred to her conversion to Tibetan Buddhism in Dringkong Karma Kagyu and what a lineage is, as well as her status as a spiritual leader of the Setian Liberation Movement. In the 1980s, in the United States, there was a moral panic, a lot of pearl clutching, about satanic ritual abuse, sometimes referred to as the Satanic Panic. It started with the publication of the now discredited memoir Michelle Remembers, which was horseshit, in 1980 and culminated in the McMartin preschool trial, a heavily publicized trial which ran from 1984 to 1990, during which prosecutors, through aggressive and leading questions, managed to get over 300 of the preschool's children to testify that they had been sexually abused by their teachers as part of satanic rituals. The charges were all eventually dropped because there wasn't any goddamn evidence and it was a bunch of horseshit. Media coverage during the trial tended to side with the prosecutors and often singled out the Church of Satan as the culprit. This led Zeena to volunteer to serve as the Church of Satan's first spokesperson. In a September 2011 interview, Zeena recalled in 1985 a U.S. news show called 2020 accused the Satanic Bible of being responsible for child daycare, satanic ritual abuse allegations, which were new then. I called my father and asked him what his media strategy would be to deal with it. this catastrophe. Nothing. He didn't care. As far as he was concerned, it didn't concern him. It wasn't anything he needed to worry about. He certainly wasn't going out in public to do anything about it. He admitted that many media sources had already contacted him, and he was just going to ignore it until it went away. I tried to convince him that this would only get worse if he didn't respond, and that he really needed to get someone to answer calls quickly, or it would be taken as an admission of guilt or suspicion. Finally, he admitted he had no one to deal with interviews or media, and I offered to help temporarily until he found someone. This was not what I'd intended to do with my life. I had other plans, as what Zeena had stated. As the Church of Satan's spokesperson, Zeena appeared in nationally syndicated programs such as The Phil Donahue Show, Nightline, Ted Koppel, Entertainment Tonight, The Late Show, and Secrets and Mysteries, and also appeared on The Sally Jesse Raphael Show alongside her husband, debating several Christians who were invited onto the program to expound their own religious views. Internationally, she appeared in such media presentations as Italy's RAI Mixer Show and Toronto's Industrial Video presentation dedicated to the compilation of Zeena's TV appearances, ending with a lengthy radio interview for CUIT. She was also interviewed in a broadcast of Devil Worship, Exposing Satan's Underground, released by Geraldo Rivera in 1988. Zeena sat alongside the Temple of Set founder and high priest Michael A. Aquino, and repeatedly denied the rumors circulating at the time that the Church of Satan was in any way involved with ritual abuse. She also called the testimony of claimants involved into question, asking them rhetorically why if people were being forced to give birth to babies for sacrificial rituals, no remains have ever been found. That's a very good question, isn't it? In 1989, Anton LaVey's 1971 book, The Complete Witch, or What to Do When Virtue Fails, was reprinted as The Satanic Witch with an introduction by Zeena. She toured the U.S. promoting her father's work in his absence, as he was no longer interested in making media appearances. Most of the appearances were made at the behest of the Church of Satan as its spokesperson. In 1989, while promoting the book, Zeena appeared with her then-husband Nicholas Schreck in an interview with televangelist Bob Larson, during which they both refuted any satanic criminal ties and pressed Larson on his own ideals, stating that it was hypocritical of him to endorse such claims by Christians, pointing out the Christian background of many criminals and violent acts within Christian history, such as the Crusades. Zeena's interview on KJTV with Tony Valdez, 1990, was the last interview she granted as public president, and I think that was actually the best interview she did as public representative and high priestess of the Church of Satan before resigning. In March 2013, in a March 2013 interview by Network Awesome, Zeena spoke for the first time on camera about her experiences with the media during the Satanic Panic years. Zeena was also in regular contact with law enforcement agencies and personnel, including Detective Patrick Matoyer of the LAPD and Robert D. Hicks, law enforcement specialist with the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and author of several precedent-setting treatises, including In Pursuit of Satan, The Police and the Occult. In Pursuit of Satan began the wave of authoritative reports debunking the Satanic Panic. Much of what Hicks gleaned from Zeena's dialogues with him was included in this treatise. Prior to Zeena's dialogues and meetings with government agencies, police, and law enforcement, had only a very limited knowledge of Satanism. In 1992, the FBI issued an official report refuting the criminal conspiracy theories of this time. Leaving the Church of Satan in 1990. In 1990, she resigned from the Church of Satan and renounced LaVeyan Satanism, according to Zeena's official page. In the process of defending the Church of Satan from these unfounded claims in the U.S. mass media, Zeena's media appearances attracted a new upsurge of membership to the formerly moribund organization, even as she began to question and ultimately reject the self-centered philosophy she promoted. As she toured the United States on behalf of the Church of Satan, Zeena's crisis of faith reached its high point when she learned that most of her father's self-created legend was based on lies, and that many of his works were plagiarized. And this is actually a truthful statement if you read the Satanic Bible. A lot of what he has stated, I wouldn't say necessarily outright plagiarized, but there should be credit where credit is due in some of these things. When jealousy and spite motivated Anton LaVey and his administrator, Densley Barton, to actually endanger Zeena's life, she could no longer continue to cover up her progenitor's true character in good conscience. This behind-the-scenes tension should be kept in mind when viewing or hearing Zeena's interviews from that time. After her renunciation of the Church of Satan, Zeena Schreck severed use of her born name LaVey and legally changed her last name for all official matters to Schreck. And on December 30th, 1990, an open letter to Michael A. Aquino of the Temple of Set, she stated, "In light of all the factors herein, I also officially severed my given surname LaVey and now prefer to be known only as Zeena, as I feel naturally aristocratic. I also have no need for the empty titles of magistra or high priestess that have been bandied about," meaning these useless titles that people would get in these organizations are truly worthless. Okay. Since then, she does not accept correspondence addressed to Zeena LaVey Schreck, or any variant using the name LaVey. Temple of Set. Zeena began to pursue ancient religious practices relating to the Egyptian god Set and Setianism. She has stated, while I was residing in Vienna, I visited a museum where a Sethian altar lives. It was there that I had a very profound experience that enabled me to clearly see the course for my future. At the time, she was also practicing traditional tantra and yoga. Her experience within those two systems, as well as her central role and life's experience in other occult and esoteric milieu, would contribute considerably to the content of her book, Demons of the Flesh, co-authored by Nicholas Schreck in 1997, and Zeena and co-guest Nicholas Schreck once again debated Christian minister Bob Larson. This time she did not represent Satanism, but rather Setianism, though the interview was titled Showdown with Satanism. At the time, she was a third-degree priestess of Set. In 2002, Zeena became High Priestess of the Temple of Set. Setian Liberation Movement. The Setian Liberation Movement was founded on November 8th, 2002, after Zeena Schreck resigned from the Temple of Set with 4 masters of the Temple of Set. One master, Magister Michael Kelly, was also a member of the corporate board of directors for the California nonprofit organization, the Temple of Set. Details of the departure were explained in a letter dated November 8th, 2002, from the newly departed Temple of Set Council of 9 members. Council of 9 member to an adept second-degree member regarding the events leading to Zeena's resignation and founding of the Storm, later renamed the Setian Liberation Movement. Shortly after Zeena Schreck resigned from the Temple of Set, a disinfo listing of the Temple of Set from December 17, 2002, under the heading 2002 Schism, the Storm Awakens, reported High Priest Don Webb stepped down, and on 9th of September 2002 was succeeded by High Priestess Zeena Schreck. 6 weeks after the Helsinki Conclave, which means the conclave, meaning the congregation in Helsinki, Zeena, Magister Aaron Besson, Magister Nicholas Schreck, and Magister Michael Kelly all resigned on November 8th, 2002. 4 priests, Alfred Rodriguez, Kevin Rockhill, Jarrett Davidson, and Richard Gavin, also resigned. Temple of Set sources have claimed that 18 initiates have resigned, while others have estimated the number at closer to 60, including several orders, elements, and members of the Adept and Setian degrees. What's different about the Temple of Set and the Church of Satan is the Temple of Set is an initiatory order, more similar like the Golden Dawn or the Argentum Asterum or Ordo Temple Orientis. It's an initiatory body. It's like a magical lodge, like the Freemasons. In one of the Setian liberation movement's earliest public frequently asked questions documents released, Disinfo. Okay, Zeena's homepage states, drawing on her own triumph over these and other dysfunctional family experiences, Zeena, a professional bereavement counselor, she's a professional bereavement counselor, founded the Setian Liberation Movement's public outreach program, Phoenix, to help others in similar situations. It explains that since 2004, Phoenix provides spiritual healing for victims of exploitative pseudo-religious organizations, former gang members, whistle-blowing ex-employees of corrupt corporations and government agencies, relatives of the violently mentally ill, and survivors of all forms of institutional abuse, including secretly abused children and spouses of prominent personalities. So keep that in mind. She's also an animal rights activist and a vegan, as far as I know. This woman is an amazing woman that does a lot of good for society. Other media appearances: as Zeena at the German premiere of Charles Manson's Superstar, a film she co-produced and narrated in 1989. Zeena's website states, preferring to allow her work to speak for itself and indifferent to public opinion, Zeena has granted only a very few interviews since 1993 and 2004. Zeena and Nicholas Schreck spoke about their book, Demons of the Flesh, on the Devil's Advocate radio show. In that interview, Zeena also spoke about The Storm, before it had been renamed Setian Liberation Movement, and its incorporation of the Tantric left. What that means is the Tantric left-hand path practices. She writes in her book, in December 2011, Zeena Schreck spoke about the Setian Liberation Movement on Night Watch Radio, while also promoting two of her short fiction stories, A Short History of Buddhism in Berlin, In December 2012, Zeena was invited back to Night Watch Radio, We're cleaning up her music and performance. Okay, this is various music and performance. You can always follow this link, because I'm going to move on at this point. So I'm just going to quickly play this, and then I'm going to round out, this will round out part 1, and I'll get into part 2 later.
Denver police have had a serious problem with teenagers and Satanism over the past 5 years. The most disturbing, an increase in teenage homicides and suicides with ritualistic or satanic overtones. Animal sacrifices, birds, dogs, church desecrations and burglaries, chalices stolen. They use them to drink the blood of their sacrifices. Do you still believe in Satan?
Yeah. He can come into you and make you do wicked stuff and weird things like that.
Like, for instance?
Hurt people, hurt your family.
In the 80s, I felt compelled to defend Satanism, primarily because you have to understand, growing up in this religion, I almost began to regard it as a kind of problem sibling. It was like my brother. It was under attack when all of these horrendous accusations were happening. And I called my father and I asked him what his media strategy was to deal with it, and he confessed that he had no media strategy whatsoever. He didn't care. At that point, he was living in a complete isolated bubble. My mother had left him. So I said, well, if you need anybody to answer questions or just to answer a phone call or something, I said, I can do it. From there, I became the high priestess of the Church of Satan.